I moved into this house a couple of months ago. I just turned 32 and got a nice promotion at work. I thought this place would be the fresh start I needed. It was cheap and close to my office, tucked away in a neighborhood that seemed fine at first. I didn't realize until later that Narcos had lived here. A part of me wanted to ignore the past. It was on my third night when everything changed. I woke up to a soft tapping on my front door. It felt like it went on forever. My heart raced as I got out of bed. I opened the door, but no one was there. I told myself it was probably the wind, just my mind playing tricks. But the tapping returned. It happened at odd hours, often around midnight. Each time, it felt deliberate, as if someone was waiting for me to respond. I tried to shake it off, but soon I noticed my living room light flickering. It happened even when I knew I was alone. There were moments I felt a chill, even with the heater running. The atmosphere felt heavy, and I couldn't shake the unease. The neighbors didn't help, either. I would see them staring at me when I got home. They always looked like they were whispering about me, their eyes darting away when I walked by. It made me feel even more nervous. The dark, abandoned houses around me seemed to close in. Their empty windows felt like dark eyes watching, and I felt trapped. One evening, I sat on the couch, trying to relax. Suddenly, I heard whispers. I strained to hear, but I couldn't make it out. My heart raced. I thought maybe it was my television or thin walls, but I knew it was more. I wanted to stay calm and tell myself it was nothing. Deep down, I was scared. That night, after a long workday, the tapping came back. This time it sounded closer. I stood up, my feet feeling heavy. I walked toward the door, my stomach twisting. Just as I reached for the knob, it fell silent. Everything felt wrong. I hesitated but ended up opening the door. Nothing. Just darkness in the hallway. I thought I heard footsteps retreating. I felt cold. Maybe it was just my neighbors playing tricks, or maybe I should have left already. I took a deep breath and tried to convince myself it was nothing. Then, in the corner of my eye, I saw something move. A shadow. It didn't feel like a trick of the light. My breath hitched, and I looked back at the door. My heart pounded. Before I turned away, I heard a voice whisper, "Let us in." My stomach dropped. The world around me grew silent and still. I turned to the doorway again. No one was there. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. I stood frozen, staring into the darkness, my heart hammering in my chest. I stood at the doorway, the cold air wrapping around me. The whisper echoed in my mind like a taunt. "Let us in." My instinct screamed at me to shut the door and lock it tight, but my body wouldn't move. I felt stuck, teetering on a line between curiosity and fear. Finally, I forced myself to back away. I needed to distract myself. I turned on every light in the house, hoping the brightness would chase away the shadows in my mind. I stumbled into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands trembled as I raised it to my lips. The following days blurred together. The tapping came every night without fail. I even started to keep a journal, noting the times and describing how it felt each time. I cursed myself for letting it get to me. I should have been better, stronger. Then there was the talk of the neighborhood. I heard others gossiping while I waited for my coffee one morning. Their hushed voices drifted through the cafe. "Those houses have ghosts, you know." I turned and caught snippets of conversations, all dark and conspiratorial. "They say people who lived there never left. They vanished." That only added to my unease. I wanted to confront my neighbors, ask them what they knew. But the thought of stepping outside made my stomach churn. What if I found something I didn't want to know? On a night my nerves felt especially frayed, I lay in bed, sleepless again. I stared at the ceiling, willing myself to fall asleep. That's when I heard it, the whispers came back, clearer now. I could almost make out words. My heart thumped louder, drowning out all other thoughts. I wanted to leap out of bed and escape, but something held me down. I swallowed hard and decided to get out of bed. I grabbed my phone for light and stepped cautiously to the door. The whispers blended, forming a chorus that felt both inviting and sinister. "Let us in." As I stepped into the hallway, I suddenly noticed a picture was hanging askew on the wall. I hadn't noticed it before, maybe because I was too preoccupied with my own paranoia. I moved closer, the light flickering from my phone casting shadows that danced across the surface. That's when I saw a name written in faded marker on the frame's edge, Diego. A chill ran down my spine, the whispers seemed to grow louder. I backed away, my heart racing even faster. What did it mean? I couldn't help but feel that the name had a significance, something terrible connected to the past of this house. In a panicked rush, I scrambled for the living room, wanting to distance myself from that name, that feeling. I swung around to the exit, but the whispers intensified. "Let us in." Then everything went dark. The lights flickered out completely, plunging me into fear-filled silence. I stood frozen in the darkness, the weight of silence pressing against me like a heavy blanket. My heart pounded, each beat echoing in my ears, drowning out my racing thoughts. I raised my phone, the small light barely cutting through the blackness, revealing nothing but shadows. "Stop it," I whispered to myself, trying to muster some courage. I felt stupid being scared of what? A name? Whispers? But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about those things. There was something deeper, something off about this place. As I fumbled for the light switch, I felt an unusual chill sweep through the room. A draft? But no windows were open. My fingers brushed the wall, looking for anything to anchor myself in the dark. Then it hit me, the whispers, the tapping, the name. They were all connected. I needed to know more about Diego. With newfound resolve, I made my way to the front door. The whispers quieted as I reached toward the knob, freezing for a split second before opening it. The cold air hit me like a shock, pulling me back to the reality outside. I stepped into the night, clutching my phone tightly, almost wishing I had brought something more. I didn't want to be outside, but staying inside felt too risky now. My gut pulled me toward the only house I really knew in the neighborhood, the one next door. The old woman who lived there, Mrs. Larkin, was known for being friendly. Maybe she could help. Hesitation gnawed at me as I crossed over, wondering if she'd mark me as crazy for asking about something so strange. But what did I have to lose? I knocked, the sound sharp in the quiet night. My heart thudded in my chest as I waited. Moments later, the door creaked open. Mrs. Larkin's thin frame stood before me, her hair a wild gray halo around her wrinkled face. Her eyes narrowed, peering at me through the dim light of her hallway. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice raspy. I hesitated. I need to ask you something about the neighborhood." Her expression shifted slightly, as if she already knew what I was going to say. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. I entered cautiously, the warmth of her home contrasting sharply with the chill outside. The walls were lined with books and family photos. It all felt normal, but the atmosphere seemed to hum with secrets. "I've been hearing things at my house," I began, trying to find the right way to frame my question. "About someone named Diego. Do you know anything?" Mrs. Larkin tensed. Her hands clasped tightly in front of her, and for a moment, I worried I had crossed a line. But then, she nodded slowly, as if deciding how much to reveal. "Diego lived there a long time ago," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "People say he was connected." "Connected?" I asked, pressing for more. She regarded me with a knowing look. "To things that shouldn't be spoken of. There are stories that should stay buried." My stomach tightened as realization dawned. This wasn't just a ghost story. What happened to him? Mrs. Larkin hesitated, then her gaze flicked toward the door behind me. I felt it too. The air had shifted. I turned but saw only shadows stretching across the walls, chaotic shapes that seemed to dance in anticipation. "It's not safe to talk about this," she said, her voice rising slightly. "Not now. You need to go back home." Go back? I hadn't even scratched the surface. And yet, a deeper instinct urged me to leave. Fear prickled at the edges of my mind, stinging like icy fingers. I stepped back towards the door, pulse racing. How much danger had I already tempted by even asking? As I closed the door behind me, the whispers returned. But now, they were different. More insistent. I felt trapped, caught in a web of an unsettling truth that I wasn't ready to face, and just as I was about to flee back to the safety of my house, a figure moved in the shadows at the edge of the yard. Someone was watching me. My breath hitched, panic surging anew as I squinted into the darkness. Who was it? What did they want? The whispers wrapped around me again, and dread settled heavy in my chest. I took a step back, my entire body wired with fear. My heart raced as I tried to make out the figure in the shadows. It stood still, watching me. The whispers grew louder, swirling around my head, as if they were egging me on. I wanted to scream, but all I could manage was a shaky breath. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice breaking the stillness of the night. The figure shifted slightly. I felt the cold grip of dread wrap around my throat. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Then, it stepped forward into the dim light from my phone, and I caught a glimpse of a young man, maybe my age, with dark hair and piercing eyes. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. "Why are you in my yard?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a cautious step closer, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his voice low and calm. I saw you talking to Mrs. Larkin. What do you know about her?" I asked, still on edge. "She knows things," he said, his gaze darting towards the house. "Things about the past, things you don't want to get mixed up in." I felt a thick knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. "Like Diego?" His expression darkened instantly. "You shouldn't say his name. It's not safe." We stood there, the silence enveloping us like a shroud. The darkness loomed heavy around us, and I thought I could hear the low whispers again, this time more like a chant. "You're not supposed to be here," he insisted, urgency edging into his voice. "You need to get away from this place." I shook my head, confused. "Why? What's the danger?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Diego was involved with people who," he trailed off, glancing around nervously. "Things that go bump in the night." My skin crawled. I wanted to turn and run, but fear held me rooted in place. "What do you mean?" I could tell you, but it wouldn't help. "Just, please, trust me. You're already in danger. You need to get away from here before it finds you," he warned. "Finds me?" I echoed, a sense of helplessness washing over me. That's when I noticed the shadows behind him flickering in a way that didn't look right. They seemed to pulse and breathe, stretching toward me like searching hands. I took an involuntary step back, reality crashing in. A sudden sound like the slamming of a door echoed from my house. The figure's eyes widened in alarm. "You need to go," he urged, backing away slowly, glancing at the noise. I turned, panic kicking in. Whatever it was, it felt as if it were closing in on me. I sprinted across the yard, blindly heading for my front door. But the whispers were everywhere now, roaring in my ears, blending into a maddening chant. Just as I reached my front steps, I paused. I turned back to see if he was following. But he was gone, swallowed by the night. I hesitated for a second, then dashed inside, locking the door behind me. Breathless and terrified, I leaned against the door. I was safe, for now. But a lingering question gnawed at me. What had I stumbled into? And was Diego really gone, or was he still out there, waiting? The next morning, I woke to the sounds of birds chirping outside my window. The light streamed in, but it felt hollow, like it couldn't pierce the dread clinging to me. I didn't sleep well. My mind replayed the encounter over and over, each time twisting my stomach tighter. I knew I needed answers. Mrs. Larkin was my only lead, but the thought of facing her again felt daunting. Still, I couldn't ignore the warnings. There had to be a way to understand this danger that was lurking. After a quick breakfast, I made my way toward her house. As I walked, I scanned the street, half expecting the boy from last night to appear out of the shadows. But the road was just as quiet as any other day. I knocked on Mrs. Larkin's door, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt like every breath was weighted with the questions I desperately needed to ask. A moment later, she opened the door, her eyes wide as if she had been waiting for me. "Hello, dear. I was hoping you would come by," she said, her voice thin, almost brittle. "Can I come in?" I asked, almost pleading. She stepped aside, and I entered the dimly lit living room. The air felt charged, as if something unsaid hung between us. I took a deep breath, the smell of old books and faded lavender overwhelming. "I need to know about the boy I met last night," I said, looking directly at her. "What can you tell me?" Her face clouded with concern. "Did he warn you?" "Yes, but I don't understand." "Who is he? What happened to Diego?" The questions spilled out, my urgency pushing each one forward. Mrs. Larkin hesitated, wringing her hands. "You don't know what you're dealing with. Diego was involved in something dangerous, something that binds this town in ways you can't imagine." I felt my pulse quicken. "What do you mean? What happened to him?" She paused, glancing nervously out the window. "He became involved with a group that deals with forces beyond our understanding. They don't just operate in this world." Chills skittered down my spine. "Forces? What are you talking about?" "Darkness," she muttered, eyes darting back to me. "You saw it last night. The shadows that came for him. They already know about you, and they're watching." I pulled back, grappling with her words. "Watching? Why? What do they want from me?" A loud crash interrupted our conversation, coming from the kitchen. We both jumped. "Stay here!" she hissed, rushing toward the sound. I wanted to follow, but fear rooted me in place. Then I caught sight of something moving in the hallway, a flicker of darkness darting behind the open door. My instincts flared, and I rushed forward to see what was happening. That's when I saw it, a figure cloaked in shadows, standing just inside the threshold. I froze, my heart pounding as terror lodged itself in my throat. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my chest. The whispers returned, crescendoing into a chaotic symphony of fear. Before I could decide to flee or confront it, the figure lunged toward me, its intentions unreadable but palpable. Before I knew it, the shadow had closed the distance. I stumbled back against the wall, my breath quick and shallow. The figure moved as if melting in and out of the light, dark tendrils trailing behind it, and I felt a surge of panic. I had to get out of there. Just when I thought it would reach me, a loud shout broke through the haze. "Get back!" Mrs. Larkin's voice rang out, sharp and authoritative. She raced back into the room, brandishing a thick, ancient-looking book. The figure hesitated, its form wavering like smoke in a breeze. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Larkin demanded, her eyes fierce as they locked onto the dark mass. "You have no power here." The atmosphere shifted, the air thickening with tension. Seizing the moment, I dove past Mrs. Larkin, darting for the front door. My instinct was to flee, to escape the nightmare that had suddenly engulfed me. "Hold on!" Mrs. Larkin shouted, but I didn't look back. I burst through the door and into the sunlight, gasping for fresh air. It felt like freedom, but only for a moment. I stood outside, the cool breeze brushing against my skin, but when I turned to find Mrs. Larkin, I saw shadows pooling at the entrance. "What's happening?" I called, dread pooling in my stomach. She was still inside, fighting against the figure. "Run, dear," she urged, her voice laced with fear. I hesitated only for a heartbeat. The streets were empty, silent witnesses to the strange battle unfolding in the safety of Mrs. Larkin's home. Reluctantly, I forced my feet to move. I sprinted down the street, the echo of my footsteps ringing loud in my ears. I was desperate to put as much distance between myself and that thing as possible, but my thoughts were racing. Diego. The boy. What connection did he have to all this? I didn't want to think about the darkness. I just needed to get home. I darted around the block and slipped into my house, slamming the door behind me. The stillness inside was misleading. I felt watched, as if something lingered just outside. Clenching my fists, I leaned back against the door. I had questions, but the answers seemed more threatening than the unknown. I headed for my room, my thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. I needed clarity. Then I heard it. A soft tapping sound. My heart stuttered. It was coming from my window. I approached cautiously, heart racing with every step. Peeking through the curtain, I gasped. There was the same boy I had seen last night. He stood there, eyes wide and filled with urgency. I opened the window, barely able to keep my voice steady. "What do you want?" He leaned closer, shadows shifting around him as he whispered urgently, "You have to come with me. They're coming for you." Suddenly, the air thickened again, and my instincts screamed at me to close the window and lock the world out. But something in his gaze pulled me in, a mix of fear and determination that I couldn't ignore. "Who's coming?" I asked, my voice cracking. He shook his head. "Not here. They can hear us. Just trust me." Every nerve in my body told me to run in the opposite direction, but his desperation held me frozen. I was caught between the shadows of uncertainty and the growing darkness closing in around me. I stood frozen by the window, the boyish eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. The hairs on my arms stood on end, a primal instinct urging me to slam the window shut and retreat into the safety of my house. But the urgency in his voice worried me. "Why should I trust you?" I finally managed to ask, my heart racing. He looked over his shoulder, as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. I couldn't help but feel the weight of his gaze. "Because if you don't, you won't survive the night." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean?" "They know what you saw. They know you're connected to it now." His voice dropped lower, nearly a whisper. "Mrs. Larkin isn't just a sweet old lady. She's involved in something much bigger." The mention of Mrs. Larkin sent a wave of confusion crashing over me. How could this boy know anything about her? I only had vague memories of her stories, tales of magic and strange happenings that I had always chalked up to imagination. "Come with me," he insisted. "This place isn't safe anymore." I glanced back at my room, at the comfort of my familiar space. But the shadows outside felt thicker now, as if they were creeping closer. "If I go with you, where will we even go?" I asked, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Down the street," he replied, tension tightening his expression. "To the old church. It's south, the only place we'll be safe." "Why?" My mind raced. "What's at the church?" His lips pressed into a thin line. "A way to understand what's happening. And how to fight it." Before I could gather my thoughts, I noticed movement outside, dark shapes flitting between houses, whispering shadows skimming along the pavement. My stomach dropped. "They're coming, aren't they?" I blurted. He nodded, urgency painting his features. "We have to go. Now." Without thinking twice, I pushed the window wider, adrenaline pumping through my veins. The boy grasped my arm, his touch cool yet grounding, and I clambered out after him. We rushed into the street, breaths mingling in the damp night air. We headed around the corner, my heart pounding in a rhythm of dread. "What are those things?" I asked, barely keeping pace. "Creatures that feed on fear. They want to silence you." He looked at me, his eyes fierce. "That's why Mrs. Larkin fought so hard. She knows how dangerous they are." The thought twisted in my stomach. I didn't want to believe it, but instinct told me otherwise. As we neared the church, the atmosphere grew heavier, a thick blanket of dread settling in. Then we heard a sound like shattering glass, followed by a low growl. I stopped, panic rising. "What was that?" "Run!" he shouted, pulling me along. The shadows around us shifted violently, forming darker shapes that seemed to reach out and snare the air between us. We stumbled into an alley that opened into a heavy wooden door. The church. I pushed against it, panic tightening my chest as the growls increased. My fingers slipped on the handle until finally, it creaked open. The moment we crossed the threshold, I turned to look back, scanning the night shrouded in darkness. "What now?" I asked, eyes wide. "That's when I saw it," the boy said, breathless. "They followed us." The church was dark, the only light filtering through the stained glass windows, casting strange colors across the wooden floor. I could feel my heart racing as I turned back to the door, anxiety clawing at my throat. The boy stood close behind me, eyes darting around the dim interior. I can't be here, I stammered, back pressed against the door. This isn't safe. We need to go, not stay. They're already here, he said quietly, glancing towards the shadows that clung to the corners. We want to be safe until we understand what they want. I swallowed hard. What do they want? He hesitated, an uneasy expression crossing his face. You're the key. They're drawn to you because of what you saw. What I saw. Panic bubbled up inside me. I didn't see anything important. He stepped closer, his voice low. You saw Mrs. Larkin. You saw the magic. They won't let that go. Before I could respond, an eerie sound echoed from outside, a rustling mixed with low growls, like something prowling the night. My instincts screamed at me to bolt, but something kept me rooted in place. All of this is tied to the church, the boy continued. The magic. The creatures. They're afraid we'll uncover the truth. Truth about what? The fear in my voice was unmistakable. About the darkness that's been here for generations. The church was a barrier, a protector, he explained, his gaze now fixed on the altar. But it's weakening. That's why Mrs. Larkin fought to keep it safe. A chill crept through me at his words. What had I gotten myself into? Suddenly, the door rattled against its frame. I gasped and whipped my head towards the sound. The shadows outside grew darker, shifting and swirling as if tasting the air. The boy grabbed my hand, pulling me towards the altar with urgency. We need to find the lantern, he said. It's the only way to protect ourselves for now. Lantern? What lantern? I exclaimed in panic, my mind racing. Just trust me. He glanced back at the door. It won't hold them forever. I followed him reluctantly, fear gnawing at my resolve. The boy moved up the steps to the altar, reaching toward a dusty shelf. I hung back, scanning the church and feeling the weight of unseen eyes on me. That's when I noticed it. A flicker of movement in the corner of the room. My body froze. Look out! I shouted as a dark shape lunged forward from the shadows, but it was too late. The creature leapt, and everything went black. When I came to, the smell hit me first, musty and stale, like something had been rotting in the dark for years. I blinked against the dim light, disoriented. The boy was gone. I shot up, heart pounding. Hello? I called out, but my voice echoed back, swallowed whole by the church's vast emptiness. I struggled to stand. My head throbbed from the impact. I must have hit the floor somehow. My eyes darted around, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I was still at the altar, though the shadows felt deeper now, more alive. The lantern he mentioned was nowhere in sight. Panic surged within me. Where was he? Suddenly, a low growl reverberated from the corners again, louder and angrier. I stepped back, trembling, my mind racing. I needed to leave, but the door was blocked. Something large was moving outside, thrashing against it. I took a deep breath, struggling to push down the fear. I needed to think. I scanned the shelves behind the altar. They were filled with ancient books and strange trinkets, but nothing that looked useful. It was overwhelming, like I was drowning in history that didn't belong to me. That's when I saw a glimmer, a metallic object poking out from behind a stack of dusty books. I moved closer, keeping my eyes peeled for any sign of movement. I grabbed the object and pulled it out. It was a small, ornate lantern, delicate but heavy in my hands. The glass was cracked, but it felt warm, strangely reassuring. Is this it? I whispered, half to myself. Before I could ponder the significance, the door rattled again. Hastily, I turned to face the noise. The shadows were growing closer, taking shape. There were two dark figures now, indistinct but threatening. A chill coursed through me, and I gripped the lantern tightly. What do I do? I murmured, my voice shaky. I noticed a small compartment at the base of the lantern. Desperation made me fiddle with it until I heard a soft pop. To my surprise, an ember ignited inside, casting a warm glow around me. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the light. I stumbled back, breathing heavily. The boy's words echoed in my mind. The lantern was meant to protect me, but how? Before I could dwell on it longer, the door buckled under another ferocious impact. I needed to find a way out. I could almost hear the boy's voice guiding me. "Focus," I whispered. I hurried to the edge of the altar where the wall met the floor. Maybe there was another way. My fingers brushed against the cold stone. There had to be something, when I felt it a slight shift, like a loose brick. I dug my nails into the crevice and pulled. The wall moved. A hidden door appeared, dust and cobwebs cluttering its frame. I glanced back at the shadows, which were no longer still but swirling with malevolent energy. I had to go. I pushed the door open, half expecting a creature to leap at me. Nothing happened. Just darkness beyond it, but it was darker than the church, a different kind of darkness. Taking a deep breath, I stepped through. Whatever lay ahead felt crucial. I could hear the growls muffled now as I closed the door behind me. I was moving deeper into something I didn't understand, but I knew I couldn't turn back then. As I made my way down the narrow passage, I heard a voice, a familiar one. "You shouldn't have come here." I froze, my heart racing. It was the boy. But why did it sound so far away? The narrow passage echoed with unease as I moved deeper into darkness, every step weighed down by the lingering threat outside. My heart raced at the sound of the boy's voice, desperate and filled with urgency. "You shouldn't have come here." Each word was like a pull on my very essence, urging me to retreat. But there was no turning back now. I needed answers. "Where are you?" I called, my voice trembling as I strained to hear more. The passageway seemed to stretch endlessly, shrouded in a heavy silence that pressed against me from all angles. There were no windows, no light to guide me, just an enveloping blackness that felt alive, curious and menacing. Suddenly, the shadows flickered, and I heard the distant sound of footsteps, light yet deliberate, as if someone or something was just out of sight. I quickened my pace, clinging tighter to the lantern that offered only a dim glow. As I went further, I could hear faint whispers creeping in, the same echoes that haunted my nights. They grew louder, merging into a cacophony that swirled around me, raising the hairs on my arms. "Let us in," they hissed, taunting me from the depths of the shadows. The memory of that phrase gripped me with fear, igniting an instinct to run, yet curiosity nagged at me, pulling me closer to the heart of the maze. Just then, I spotted a faint flicker of light ahead. The boy. He stood at the end of the passage, a silhouette against the glow. My chest swelled with relief, but his expression was serious. "You shouldn't be here. We can't let them find you." His words were clipped, urgent. "What do you mean? What's happening?" I shouted, closing the distance between us. I was just trying to help. I didn't understand how my desire for answers had put me in danger. He shook his head, stepping closer but glancing back toward the shadows. "You have to listen. The darkness is coming. It feeds on fear, and it wants you." "Me?" The weight of those words crashed over me like a wave. I felt sick, my pulse hammering in my throat as the whispers transformed into a roar, circling us like sharks smelling blood. "Yes. It knows you saw Mrs. Larkin. The moment you acknowledged that darkness, it chose you. We are all connected by it." His voice trembled, and I took a shaky breath, backing towards the light. "What do you mean by connected?" I asked breathlessly, trying to rationalize what he was saying. The lantern flickered uncertainly, casting shadows that seemed to claw at the walls. He gestured toward a door that loomed behind him, an old wooden structure worn by time. "This is the heart of the church. If we don't go through, they will find us." "What's inside?" I hesitated, fear gnawing at me. "Only the truth. It's where the power lies," he insisted, urgency glazing his eyes. "But we have to hurry." Without waiting for my response, he pulled the door open, and we stepped inside. The air felt different here, thicker, almost electric. The room illuminated into a vast chamber adorned with strange symbols and ancient relics. Something deep within me felt drawn to them. I looked around, my breath shallow. "What are we looking for?" "Find the book," he said hastily, his voice echoing around the chamber. It's the only way to push back against the darkness. As I searched frantically, the whispers outside grew louder, echoing through the walls. I dug through the clutter, adrenaline heightening my senses while a sense of dread loomed over me. That's when I saw it, an ornate book resting on a pedestal in the center of the room, illuminated in a beam of light. Here! I gasped, rushing towards it, desperate to understand, to fight. The pages were worn and covered in strange writing, images of entities I couldn't comprehend. Don't lose sight, he urged, stepping closer beside me. We have to read it, but we don't have much time. I began flipping through the pages, trying to grasp the message. Lines about sealing darkness, pendants of protection, offerings to ward off shadows blended into a whirlwind of knowledge that made my head spin. Cover me, the boy urged, glancing nervously at the door. The shadows swirled outside, angry and relentless as they clawed at the threshold. What do you mean? I replied, heart racing as I followed his gaze. Just trust me, he commanded, eyes fierce. You're stronger than you think. Hold the light up. I gripped the lantern with both hands as he began to recite lines from the ancient book, words spilling from his mouth as if he were channeling something greater than himself. I could feel palpable energy rising, rippling through the air around us, igniting warmth that both countered and challenged the suffocating shadows. At first, there was silence. The whispers seemed to ease, but as he chanted, the whispers transformed into a raw, powerful wail that reverberated through the chamber. I glanced behind us, terror pulling at my gut as the shadows twisted and began to slip through the door. Keep reading, he yelled, his voice strained, urgency soaking through the fabric of our reality. I forced my eyes back to the book, the words becoming a lifeline as the shadows intensified, tearing at the edges of the light. Just then, the door exploded open, and dark figures poured in, chaos unfurling. The boy shouted the last words, charged with energy, and simultaneously, I raised the lantern high. Its glow flared, bathing us both in light that pushed back against the encroaching darkness. For a moment, we held back the shadows, sealing a barrier between us until emptiness enveloped us, and then it happened. A wave of energy pulsated from the lantern, casting shadows aside, and engulfing the room in blinding light. I clutched the book tightly, unsure if we'd done enough. As the brightness faded, darkness thinned, but the boy was gone. I felt an unsettling stillness linger. Did we succeed? Or had I lost him to the very forces we sought to escape? I stumbled forward into nothing, uncertainty clawing at the edges of my mind. Would the shadows regain their strength? And what was the cost of the truth we had uncovered? The remnants of danger pulsated all around me, but one question remained unanswered: was this truly over, or merely the beginning of a much darker chapter?